Hi, I'm Gino Cafarelli. I'm an actor, filmmaker, and now author of a new book called Athena Visits to Marina, inspired by my daughter. And you're now listening to Growing Up Italian, the podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Hello to all the fans. Hello. You are now listening to the Growing Up Italian podcast with actor, filmmaker, and now author Gino Cafarelli, a dear friend to Growing Up Italian. Thank you so much.
Gino from Clubhouse.
Gino from Clubhouse.
Yeah, the newly new forum called Clubhouse. But we knew each other before Clubhouse. We met. We met and spoke before Clubhouse. Yeah. How you doing, Sabino and Michela? How are you guys?
It's a pleasure, Gino.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here.
This has been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. Last time we got messed up with the snow. But here we are.
We're here. And I just said, my belly's full. I had a nice panini.
Couple glasses of wine.
Well,
I should say paper cups.
but there's some yumminess going in the cup here. But also, more importantly, that panini sandwich that I kind of created today on my own, right?
It was a little different.
It was a little different. I said,
a little chicken cutlet, mozzarella.
Sabino called me up. He says, "What do you want for lunch? We'll prepare it now, so when you get there, it'll be all set." I'm like, "Okay." I'm thinking about it. I'm like, should I go old school cold cuts, or should I go straight up chicken cutlet like you were talking about? So I'm like, flavor of like chicken cutlet, panini style. I said, throw in a little fresh mozz, some tomato, right, and one slice of prosciutto. So,
just for the little saltiness,
right?
You know?
So I think we're gonna call that the Janut's panini. From what I'm hearing,
I like
now,
it.
Right?
I like it.
That's what I hear.
It's a good name.
I like it. So me and Gino, we've been talking for a while, but recently on Clubhouse, I'm sure you guys heard it on this podcast already, but we always host these fun rooms, and Gino, whenever he jumps in, is great. You make a great moderator. You really know how to gauge the convo.
The bobbing and weaving.
Yeah, exactly.
And weaving,
you know what I'm saying? Like direct where we're going with it, and
the Jones Beach undertow. You know, the wave that hits you when like it comes out of nowhere, and like, oh shit, where'd that come from? Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yep, exactly. But we basically did like 50 of these podcasts already, but in Clubhouse, you know, like where.
Yeah, that's like an open forum now to just kind of like discuss, like, you know, sometimes it starts you start talking about one thing and then you go down the rabbit hole, but sometimes you discover like all this amazing stuff about people that you kind of know, but you don't know because you start finding out more about people, which is incredible, which is awesome. Like I was supposed to go to bed last night and instead of texting you, I was like, oh, he's in a room right now. The Growing Up Italian has got a room going on. Let me just go in there and say hello to Sabino, say, I'll catch you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We're on for tomorrow because we scheduled it a couple of weeks ago. But I was like, I got in there and then I stayed in there for a little while before I went to bed. And
we had a couple good guys. And,
there was a couple of good guys in there, and just like it just went off very organically, and it was awesome. Yeah, I always have a great time in there, especially espresso time because I'm usually I've been shooting on a TV gig recently in the last couple of months, and so every time I caught the espresso time, it was always like
on break
or
when it was espresso time.
And it was like coffee time, like always like during that day of how I was working that week. So I would always enjoy coming into that room. I always looked forward to it. So,
well, we always love having you. And I got pretty familiar with you. Like I know your whole story, but I want to show everybody else what you're all about now. We're also going to plug in a book. But first, I want to talk about your whole story, your whole upbringing, being an Italian-American, first generation, off the boat parents.
Yeah,
you speak Italian,
and I hold that very proudly. Of like, where a lot of people shunned away from that, or do shun away from it still, or even back in the day, kind of like, well, they didn't want me to speak a second language. They wanted me to speak English. Like I'm extremely proud of being Italian American, first generation. My parents were born and raised in a small town called Pietrapertosa in the southern part of Italy, part of La Provincia di Potenza, which is in the Basilicata region. Yeah. Yep. So it's very rare that, because growing up Italian in, high school, grammar school, college, you grew up with, people of Italian ethnicity. They would always have different, upbringing. Like my dad was from Naples or my mom was from Bari. But the beautiful thing, when I feel that, that I look at it as an adult now, not that I didn't appreciate it when I was younger, but the beautiful thing about that is that it's very rare and authentic and genuine, then you have, the same, bloodline coming from the same small town, from the same city, from the same region in Italy, both my mother and my dad. That rarely.
Very rare. We were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, that rarely happens today. And, it's like, kind of like that 1 in a million type of scenario. So I look at it as the most amazing quality is being brought up in New York and as an American, but my parents being from that part of the boot, from the same town, from the same city in the same region, Italy. I hold that very near and dear to me, and I still, I have lots of cousins.
How old were your parents when they came here? Did they marry here? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, and I could talk about it because you know what? If I let my mom listen to the podcast, which I will, I'd be like, because it was a joke about 20 years ago. So my parents got married in 1968 in Astoria, Queens, at the Astoria Manor, a block away from where they had their first apartment, where I grew up as a kid in Astoria, up until I was about 8, before my parents bought their first house in Flushing. And in Astoria, there was this diner right across the way called Neptune Diner. And right in the middle...
I know Neptune Diner.
Right in the middle is a statue of Christopher Columbus, which they tried to deface a few times already, which boggles my mind, of course. So from like where Christopher Columbus statue is to Neptune Diner to where my parents' apartment was, again, they came to America, got married at Astoria Manor in 1968, and July of 1968 to be exact. And I was born February of 1969. So if you really calculate the months from like...
Oh, they had you brewing before that.
Exactly. So I look at my parents' like wedding book about 20 years ago just to look at it.
You know what's funny is I guarantee you all the older towns you're like, wait, hold on.
Oh, they were calculating.
Oh, they were counting.
Wait, that's 6 months.
But I go to my mom about 20 years ago and I go, I looked at the book again. This is beautiful. This is great. The wedding at Astoria, 1968, July 27th of 1968. I go, wait a second. And I started doing the math. Then we're in July, August, September, October, November, January, February. I'm like, wait, that's like 6 months. I was born in February. I'm like, wait a second. Ma, you were pregnant when you had me. And you were pregnant when you got married. Who told you that?
Be like,
well,
man.
She started like estima. What they say, estima? In Italian, they say
estima?
Estima. Like
Ma
I'm like, no, ma. Like ma, I go to school. Like like that's I go to.
So your parents were married in Astoria, lived in Astoria.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Astoria?
I grew up in Astoria up until I was about 8. Yeah.
So was Astoria like predominantly Italian at that point?
Italian and Greek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
It
I
still
know
is,
now
kinda.
it's predominantly Greek, but
Greek.
I didn't
But still,
know.
there's still a nice amount of Italian roots there too.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know, Bronx Tale. I always think about Bronx Tale in Astoria on
And that
30th Avenue.
It was filmed. It's funny.
It was filmed on 30th Avenue, right? 30th Ave.
Right by St. Joe's.
Yes, and that church where they doubled up for Mount Carmel because like that was the church in the Bronx.
Yep.
But that's so amazing because I used to go there like just to like I was like 19, 20 at the time, and like I would drive into Astoria to watch them film that. That was 1991, 92, I think. Yeah, that was again it's a Bronx Tale, but they filmed it in
You
Queens.
actually were in the Bronx Tale, right?
That was my very first professional job as an actor on a set. I knew nothing about being in like the Screen Actors Guild or a union, and it was an open call to be in like this extra scene, and they shot it in Yonkers, and it was supposed to be the Bronx, and I got casted out of like this like network that was like auditioning in Queens. So yeah, I got paid like $30 to like work.
So you're in the movie.
No, they could cut the extra scene out, which I didn't even care about it.
But he still got paid, and it was
$30. I was just starting out in the world of acting and filmmaking, and I was watching De Niro 20 feet away from me on a walkie-talkie, giving
That's
directions
goals
to
right
people.
there.
Yeah, it was like I was just like zoned in on what he was doing, and of course, like I was like, I was like, I wish I was that actor right now, like talking, taking direction from De Niro.
manifesting it.
But again, the truth of manifesting was 15 years after that, he winds up casting me in a second film that he directed called The Good Shepherd, which I actually went in and read for as a professional actor, and he handpicked me from like a couple hundred people to play Joe Pesci's bodyguard in The Good Shepherd, and the guy in the scene with Joe Pesci was Tommy DeVito from the Jersey Boys, which I didn't know at the time. Like he's like, yeah, Joe, he has me come with him all the time, and I'm like, He's like, yeah, I'm working on this thing called the Jersey Boys. And I'm like, well, what's that? He's like, it's a musical. Joe founded kind of like the Jersey. And it was like just beginning for the musical. And I was on the set of The Good Shepherd. And De Niro directed. And he handpicked me to do this, a couple of scenes with Matt Damon and Joe Pesci. And they wound up keeping one scene from the movie. When I told him that I was an extra in a Bronx Tale, he was like, what? And that was like 15 years later. So I watched him direct and talk into a walkie-talkie in 1992. And in 2005, that's a long time after, almost 15 years, he's directing me in The Good Shepherd. That's the beautiful thing about sticking it, sticking it through in, what you believe in as an artist, whether it be, musician, actor, filmmaker, whatever it may be. Just like, follow through and kind of always like stick to it, because life does come full circle. And I have a lot of those full circle scenarios, growing up in my life,
Mm-hmm. I think it's like kind of the story of an underdog, that you come from the grassroots and you basically forced your way in, like you worked your way into being who you are today.
Yeah, I was, I was never given the key to the city type of, say that people kind of like, or nepotism. My dad, is retired. God bless him. He turned 80. Went through a rough little year. He had a quadruple bypass, and he's doing great. He's 80, and I'm knock on wood. I still have my parents, but they come from a different world, being that they came from Italy. My dad, again, being an artist himself, bricklayer, mason, brownstones in Lower East Side, Greenwich Village, that you would look at and be like, he did this by hand, all by eye. So I appreciate it more today. Tile, marble. He was an artist in his own way, and being an artist, as a filmmaker and an actor filmmaker is there's a certain, you craft it like my dad crafted that way of, making a living, where of course the hardest part of growing, and we spoke about it in
this is probably going to be the clip that you're going to see on Instagram.
It's very it's hard because they want, of course, parents always want the best for you, but if you have it in your heart and in your perseverance to like feel like you've been called to do something, you follow that with your heart. I kind of balanced it for a long time. Do your parents feel you have a real job, or did it take a while for them to say
this is a good question?
You know what?
I'm still struggling with it too. So that's why
if I call my mother now and I got her on the phone, she doesn't have an iPad. They don't do the iPad thing or the iPhone thing. I can't even FaceTime. So
they got the flip.
Yeah, they got the old school flip phone. But I have these conversations with them. When I'm in their presence, and I tell them, I go. They get it, but they don't get it. I think they'll never get it, but not that they won't support you, but you could hear the enthusiasm, I guess, in their voices when they get the phone call, like, oh, well, you just saw Gino on this TV thing, or I saw Gino on this movie. Isn't he working on that they just talked about on this? So it, like, the news gets out there, which is fantastic, and that's not why I've ever gotten into this business, because of the press, but to like have other family members like call my mom and say that, but that's how she finds out the news, even though I tell her every day, like, I'm going to work. I'm working on this. Oh, you still got that going? Like, yeah, that's
not going anywhere.
That's not going anywhere. Like, that's what I've been professionally doing for like the last 20 years, like as my income, as as a filmmaker and an actor, and in the artistic community, it's the acting and filmmaking is not only what I do. I just launched a children's book, working on packaging another children's book for a great author. And that's my life is in the creative realm, where, again, I conformed. I went to a Catholic grammar school growing up in Queens. I go to an old boy high school.
What school did you go to? For
St. Mel's and Grammar School. Then I go to Holy Cross High School, all boy.
I was gonna say Holy Cross because that's like
Holy Cross, and I didn't make prep, and I didn't make Holy Cross my first time.
Rocco went to prep.
Rocco went to, so did my sister, but
Let me tell you,
they called prep the Battle of the Boulevards, the Terriers versus the Knights. I'd rather be a Knight than a Terrier, but I would just say that. But anyway, even though prep had all the girls. My first girlfriend, my prom date was from. I went to the St. Francis Prep, 87, and Holy Cross Prep with a girl. I'm not going to say her name.
Which prom
but she was
better?
Italian.
Which prom was better,
They
G?
were both great, and she was gorgeous. She broke my heart. I'm not going to say her name, but she broke my heart. Italian girl from
You ain't
Flushing.
getting that from us.
She broke my heart, and she's a beautiful girl. Like, but again, Italian girls back then and still now always beautiful. Like, it's just like I grew up at a very different time. Like, it was just like that's what the movie Cruise is about, which is a whole different subject. But I grew up in a very different time of that. So growing up in that kind of like realm of like conforming, grammar school, high school, and then college. I go to St. John's for pharmacy, and after 2 years, I pretty much say, like, this is not what I'm supposed to do. And I always knew I wasn't supposed to be a pharmacist. So I wind up going on the 10-year program and taking a business degree program, and then going to work for corporate America and companies while I was in school still. So I was basically working for corporate America. I was supposed to have the 4-year degree, got the job without them knowing I had the 4-year degree to finish my business degree, because I was like, if I'm going to like, start working, I'm going to finish my degree. Like, cause my parents, they're like, you got to go to school. You got to get a degree. I'm like, I got my degree. I was on a 10-year plan, but I got my degree, but that was not like, that's not what I wanted to do. After
So how did you fit acting into all this? Working full time, finishing a degree, and then your real passion.
Putting in 90 hours a week, like in your regular job, and then having another 90 hours a week. Again, I know I'm being, like I'm not using real numbers, but, like overload work ethic. Like I was working for like Sprint at the time. I was a sales rep. I was the top sales rep at Sprint PCS in 1997. And at that time, I'm thinking of all these crazy ways to kind of like get on radio. I wind up getting on radio, and then like wind up like doing this comedic stuff, which will lead to doing a song for the Yankees. And then
so for everybody listening, Gino played a major role. What exactly, you wrote the song, or what exactly?
Okay, so very good friend of mine who I know 40 years and been working with for 40 is Carmenucci, aka Carmine Famigletti. Lives down a block. Used to live down. Well, still lives on 33rd Avenue, but I grew up on 33rd Avenue in Flushing, and he grew up down the block. Fantastic filmmaker, actor. We were always kind of like close about the whole filmmaking thing. He was actually my brother's age, so he lives down the block. I start producing murder mysteries while I'm working for Sprint. After I was working for like Saturn, the car company, in the 90s, and I start producing like murder mystery theater in Queens at the Queens Plaza Hotel by LaGuardia. I'm doing murder mysteries, and I cast auditions in the city, and I get Carmine to like help me out, and Carmine like starts writing
a Yankee
this
song,
murder mystery. No, well, murder mystery.
Murder mystery was first.
Yeah, it was the murder mystery thing first, and then we start casting auditions for this murder mystery that we wind up doing, and we meet Joe, who winds up later on a couple of years after that, becoming Joey Balls. So now we meet through like the audition process. I'm like, we're doing this murder mystery. We meet Joe. And we just build this camaraderie of like, gelling and working great together, doing these like plays at the Queens Hotel by LaGuardia and doing these murder mysteries. And we start like developing this relationship where we start doing musical comedy. And they basically write a Christmas song inspired by me because, my nickname.
That's on my first 12 days of Christmas, my Pison gave to me.
So they...
That was on KTU. I mean, it still is.
That song is still relevant to this day.
It's crazy.
It's still in rotation around Christmas time.
It's crazy because that basically kind of brought us into whether the content world of like radio. Again, there was no YouTube or anything like that back in like 1998, 99, and they wind up writing this song, and they're going to perform it at a comedy club in Manhattan. They knew that I was going to be there. So like Gino's going to be in the audience tonight. It was like an homage to like, we were doing murder mysteries, and then I kind of lost touch with them for a little bit. I was, I got involved with, you get lost in like, your way of life, like girlfriend. But I was going to go see them as this comedy group, and they were like, well, Gino's going to be in the audience. We're going to like want to like sing him a song, and it was during the holidays. And they say, and we have the videotape, it was like 1998, and they go, we got a good friend of ours in the audience, Gino Janutz, this is for you, and they start doing this Christmas song. So, of course, my bells start going off, and I'm like, wait a second, that's like a fucking fantastic like Christmas song. I'm like, I'm going to like pitch it to radio and like get it on the radio. and I wind up bluffing, and I could talk about it today because like if they listen to the podcast and they hear about it, it's like it was a bluff. I go to KTU and they're like, we don't know. We might want to do it a different way and get like a Frank Sinatra impersonator to do it. I go, no. The whole fun of it is having Joey Balls and Carmenucci sing the song.
Yeah, 100%. That's what
That's
makes
the
it.
whole flavor of like the
100%.
like Frank Sinatra in person. I'm going, go to Howard Stern. He wants to do it as is. Oh no, don't do that. And next morning we go to KTU and then the whole song blows up. And then we wind up packaging a CD and then we put it out at the feast the following year. And we put a bonus
Did you sell a
song.
lot of CDs of that?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
So I remember the CDs were huge.
We were singing a Christmas song in September. So we were singing a Christmas song in September.
The Yankee song came after that?
Well, the story starts even getting better than that because Rockaluch, take it easy there, right?
We got 12 minutes.
We got 12 minutes?
No, you're good. You're good.
So Joey Balls, Carmenucci, Joe, Carmine, Janutz, me, we're at the St. Gennaro Feast. We're performing a Christmas song in September, and we have a small little booth, and this is 1998, and etched on the front of the booth, it was a 10 by 10 booth. It was a small booth. It was the first year at the feast. We almost didn't get the booth because we got flagged by the organizers of the feast. They're like, "What's this Guido Christmas you want to sell?" I'm like, it's just a parody of like growing up.
So the CD just had that one song? Or?
No, we had a bonus track called "How You Doing," but it wasn't a Yankee song yet. It was just called "How You
It
Doing."
was just How You Doing? How was that song originally? How did it go?
I'm hanging out in the club. I got so drunk. I wake up the next morning. I find a $20 bill in my pocket. I didn't know it was even there. How you doing? You know, like it was just a funny song.
I get it.
So, you know, the fact, you know, it's not even out there. Like, I don't even think we have it on YouTube. Like, it's on the original album. It was just having fun growing up in New York, going to the feast, going to clubs. So Joey's like on the mic and he's looking into the crowd and there's like this guy that's not buying the CD and he's like trying to like shy off and he's like, I don't worry. Joey's on the mic and he's like, yeah, you're probably like one of those LBI guys that hangs out in Long Island, whatever. And he's like, whatever. Turns out he winds up buying the CD, and a week later, there was no, again, the cell phone, I had a cell phone, but on the CD, I had put a 212 number as a voicemail service. So anyone that bought the CD, if they called a 212 number, I would check the voicemail every day. If anyone called, like, whoever.
That's so weird. I
Right?
never.
Isn't that crazy weird,
It's
right?
so thing.
Yeah, it was called How You Doing Entertainment. It was registered under like my incorporation, like
You
whatever.
were very ahead of the game.
Exactly, and you know what the name of the website was? Which
HowYouDoing.com?
No, it was GuidoLand.com.
Jesus.
Crazy.
So what happened? Someone left a voicemail saying that.
Guy leaves a voicemail. Goes, "Hi, my name is Charlie Wansowitz. I'll never forget the name." He goes, "I work with the Yankees, and I'm the guy that Joey was picking on the microphone, and I think you guys are fucking hilarious. And I bought the CD, and I work for the Yankees, and I played it for all the players in the locker room, and they love this Guido Christmas song, but they're like fucking fixated on this How You Doing song." And I go, "Oh, well, that was kind of like a joke, like a bonus track to like, because you can't sell a CD with just one
Single,
song.
yeah, single.
So we put like, I think it was like 3 songs on it, and we sold it for like $6 or whatever. And the bonus track was called How You Doing, and it was just about growing up in New York and growing up, like how I grew up. Like I'm at, the guy's got a great sausage pepper here. How you doing? Whatever. It was
It's
just
funny.
a regular
Look who's calling you.
It's
so funny.
And he goes, "Could you send us like a box of like CDs, like 30 CDs?" And I go, me being the crazy marketing
How much are
guru,
you paying? See, I'll be like, wait, okay, I'll do it for 150.
All right, so me, this is what I'm thinking, right? Because there's no social media, and I'm like, it's 1998, 99, and I'm going. He leaves the voicemail. He goes, we're going to be in Baltimore, and if you could like ship like 30 CDs, all the players want this How You Doing song. They love the Christmas song, but this How You Doing song, they're all laughing. How you doing? How you doing? And of course, Carmine and Joe were like, this How You Doing thing. When we were recording the song, they were like this will never work. Meanwhile, that's the song that caught on. So I go, well, we're actually going to be doing a signing for a CD in Baltimore. We'll personally drop off the CDs at Camden Yards if you're playing the Orioles. I said, well, we'll drop off the CDs. We had no business saying that we were guys doing a signing. We got in a van, drove to Baltimore.
It takes the moral of the story is it takes balls to make shit happen.
We were driving there. As we're driving there, they're like the guy who said, "Oh, I'm trying to set up this whole thing. I gotta run it by Joe. Joe Torre. to make sure we can get you guys in the Clubhouse to give out the CDs. And like, we're still driving to Baltimore, not knowing. I'm waiting for
what the hell we're doing.
I'm waiting for my Sprint phone to go off to be like, oh yeah, Joe's gonna be okay with it. Just we're driving to Baltimore, and we wind up getting.
This is the playoffs though, or no?
Yeah, it was October. It was October. They were just going into the playoffs. They clinched in Baltimore, and they wound up playing the Texas Rangers. So, as we get to Baltimore, me, Joe Carmine, we're walking through the clubhouse in Baltimore, and the whole joke was we couldn't find the stadium, and it was called Camden Yards, and the whole joke was can't find them yards because we couldn't find the stadium.
Can't find them.
Because we would ask people, excuse me, where's Camden Yards? They're like, it's over. Because if you ask where Yankee Stadium or like City,
there was no GPS back then.
Like,
you had to print the
map.
quest.
It's over there. I'm like, isn't that a big stadium here in this city?
You shouldn't be able to miss it.
So we get there, and it was one of the most surreal experiences. Like being a Met fan, and of course they found out that we were Met fans. That was the whole inside joke. We're sitting in the dugout with all the players, and they're all stretching. This is 1999 now. They're all stretching on the field. They're like, those are the guys. Those are the guys. And we're like, why are they pointing? And we're like, me and Joe Carmine, we're like, we got pictures. We're in the dugout. We're like, why are they looking at us? Then like they all bum rushed us after they were like stretching. Like, you guys are hilarious, man. That How You Doing song? Jeter, Brocious, David Cohn, Tino Martinez, like all like the greats from like that era. They're like, you guys got Jeter was like, he was by the water cooler. He's like, you guys got those CDs for us, right? I'm like, yeah, we got them. Going to the clubhouse, we're giving out the CDs. They're like, you got Knobloch like chewing on the CD, like putting it in his like CD player back then. And we're driving home, and I go, you know what? This is a great opportunity to like maybe turn the How You Doing song into a Yankee song with the whole Yankee, New York Yankees with How You Doing. And that's all three of us came up with the concept of like making it a Yankee song. Joe and Carmine going to the studio, I think that very night, knock out a Yankee song. We send it to Yankee Stadium while they're playing the Texas.
How did you do this back then on a CD or something?
On a CD, yeah. and hand deliver it to the stadium.
Yeah, that's what you had to do back then. There was like no emailing a song, right?
Straight to the stadium. We're like, I'm at the gate with like Carmenucci. Joe was bartending in the city. Like me and Carmenucci are like, we're dropping off a CD for the guys. It's like a present for like, thanking them for the, the hospitality in Baltimore. And me, Carmine, and Joe were all at separate like locations at our homes. And we're watching them clinch on ESPN. And we're sitting there at home. And I was married at the time. And I'm sitting there watching ESPN. They're clinching. And I'm watching in the locker room, and ESPN, you hear, ding, ding, how you doing? I'm like, what the fuck? And it's on ESPN. I go, like, Carmine calls me up. Joe calls me up. He goes, you hear what's going on in the locker room? They're blasting the Yankee song after they clinched. That's
crazy.
And I'm like, what the fuck? And then after that, it just kind of like took off. And
how did that go? Like, KTU picked it up? Or... Because I remember hearing that on the radio.
It
was more than them playing it at the stadium.
There's so much more to that story. Like Donnie Einer from Columbia Sony Records called us up. I thought it was a joke. I sat in front of Donnie Einer with Joe and Carmine. He was listening to the song. We were like bouncing off the sofa. He's going like, give us a day. We want to like sign you guys as a comedy group. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, he's like, yeah, me and Tommy Mottola were listening to you guys on the radio. You guys are hilarious, but we're just like goofy actors, like playing like roles. Like, we're not even supposed to be in this office, because every musician in their lifetime would want to be in front of either Tommy Mottola or Donnie Einer. And here we are. They're like, you guys are hilarious. This is How You Doing thing. And then finally, two guys by the name of Jesse Itzler and Kenny Dichter from Alphabet City Records, who wind up getting involved with SFX, who wind up after signing us, sending us to another label, brokering the deal, wind up becoming Wheels Up, Marquis Jet, and Zico Water. Like, that whole group of like guys that signed us are the biggest business entrepreneurs to this day. Like, from like seeing us and like grabbing us and saying, you guys are funny, and they brokered that deal, and they're doing very well today. They saw the concept of How You Doing, and it took us to a certain point, but. Again, it was like kind of like a fad, but it's kind of set a trend, which I always kind of like. It's always a door opener. It's like, not everything's going to close the deal. It was great. It was a great concept, but it really didn't showcase what, let's say, Carmine and I or Joe were really capable of doing, which took us 20 years later to becoming, the actors and the filmmakers that we are today.
That's a great story, man. Yeah. Obviously, growing up in Brooklyn, and I remember like that Yankee run. I remember hearing that song all the time, because even my cousin, that's a Yankee fan would always sing it. So, you know, I
Yeah,
grew up-
well, people thought, well, especially people, even like in Carmen and Joe, we joke about it still to this day. They're like, oh, yeah, that how you doing thing will never work, that concept. I basically took it and made it a trademark. I trademarked it. People are like, you really can't trademark a phrase. We've heard it in movies, Cyanide Fever.
but everybody
Rocky.
makes shirts. How you doing too? So you own that?
Well, again, the funny thing, when I started selling, or when we started selling shirts at St. Gennaro, they were original How You Doing shirts, and it said trademark because it was officially trademarked in like 1999. But then Friends with the Joey thing, they started selling shirts with NBC. And again, this can go into a whole different world of podcasting.
Yeah.
Like Johnny Cochran was supposed to be our lawyer because the whole trademark thing with the shirts and with Budweiser, they came in with the How You Doing commercial. Remember the What's Up commercial?
What's up?
Then they did the How You Doing commercial.
All these little phrases. That was Scream.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it was the Scary Movie.
Yeah.
It was not really Scream. It was a Scary Movie, but it was that
Yeah,
character.
but those that whole era of like the What's Up, they started doing these How You Doing commercials, and we were like Joe Carmine and I we're actors. Like we never got called in for an audition, and we're like they're doing this How You Doing movie. If you really backtrack the whole story, Budweiser was a big sponsor at Yankee Stadium. How You Doing the song played at Yankee Stadium. They wind up doing the How You Doing commercial after the Yankee song, How You Doing? And what do you think people do? And I don't give a fuck because I'm going to talk about it because to me it's like it's a bullshit like move. They're like, oh, these guys are doing this How You Doing concept. We can do this How You Doing commercial. They don't even call us in for an audition. Not even like come in for an audition, and they wind up like casting actors. And if they really did their homework, because the internet was still the internet back in like '99. You could Google us like we were actors. That's what we did. There were characters we were portraying. Janutz, Joey Balls, and Carmenucci were characters. So you don't call us in on an audition.
It's the same story that
then
we hear over and over.
Yeah, exactly. But then we wind up speaking to Johnny Cochran before he passes away, and we were gonna they're like, oh, so they stole the concept from you guys, like this whole How You Doing thing. And I'm like, yeah, of course they did. They're like, oh, so you guys made it a product. You guys made it a shirt. You guys made it a song. You guys made a CD. You made it a product you actually touch. And then they wind up doing a commercial after that. And I don't blame Budweiser. I blame the ad agency that got involved. That was whoever hired whoever to write the ad campaign, because they could easily been like, let's call in the How You Doing guys at the Yankee song.
That's what it
to
should have
do
been.
That exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? To me, it's not going to affect me in any way if this gets out there, because that's the truth. What happened? Like they didn't come to us and be like, "Oh, Joe, Carmen, and Joe, you guys are actors. Come in and audition." Or better yet, we're going to audition you guys, but you guys are hilarious, so we're going to give you guys the commercial because you guys are actors, right? Mm-hmm. No, that didn't happen. So they wind up taking our concept and stealing it, and they're like, "Oh, you see that How You Doing commercial? Yeah, because it was a national commercial. We were just East Coast, Connecticut, Jersey." New York, and then we started going into Toronto, like all the major Northern American East Coast cities that knew the How You Doing concept. But when they saw the Budweiser thing, that's on a national level. They're like, oh, that How You Doing commercial. Like, of course, you're going to feel like you got robbed. So Johnny Cochran comes along and goes, you know what? We're going to go after them. We're going to go, whoever was responsible for that ad campaign, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to call it How You Suing. And we're going to run with that, because you guys made it a product, and they just came along and be like, "Oh, we're gonna take that and make it." No, that's not how it works. Back then, it was easy to kind of like steal, I guess, intellectual property. Now today, with the internet, go boop 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 boop, you go right in there. No, done.
Let's talk a little bit about your acting career.
So that all those heartaches of dealing with that, because the whole How You Doing thing, exactly. Well, it's exactly because you keep your head down. You move forward. You be like, all right, you kind of like, you did me wrong on that. It's all good. It's all right. But you learn, you live and learn. Cliche, you live and learn, and you just keep on moving forward and persevering. Another person would probably be like, you know what, this is bullshit. I'm getting out of it. I don't want to deal with that, because there's a lot of heartache and a lot of like doors that get closed, and there's a lot of stuff that's not gonna, go your way. But you have to look at every. And I don't want to call it a failure, but you have to look at every. Whether they want to call it a failure or, in your eye, maybe not call it a success, but everything that happens, if it doesn't happen the way you think it should happen, learn from it, because every failure is actually a success, if that makes sense.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, but it's not like, okay, so that didn't work out. That wasn't a failure. That actually moved the needle a little bit. It got me to
There's
the
no
next.
such thing as failure.
No,
as long
I
as
don't.
you're taking
No.
something from it or learning something from it. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, I could sit here and say, you know what? Yeah, I was the pioneer of like, you know, I can name a dozen people that are using that. You know, Wendy Williams is using "How You Doing" now. Sal the
Joe
Voice,
from-
Joe from Friends. Like everyone's like using "How You Doing." 20 years later, everyone's still like, "How you doing?" Social media today, I see, you know, younger generation, "How you doing?" Like.
So you guys were the first ones to really.
We were the
put
first ones. Well, we were the first ones to make it a product. Like it was a product. It was a shirt that you could actually buy at St. Gennaro. It was a CD you could buy at St. Gennaro called "How You Doing, Yankees." So we made it a product, but we were, you know, we went with the, I guess, with the flow of like getting us looked at, but we were more deeper as artists and filmmakers and as actors. Which again, to your point, has gotten me to the point where, you know, it opens up doors, but then you really want to be seen as, well, this is what we're really capable of doing as like actors or filmmakers or artists.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like it helped you like get.
No,
on
no,
track,
I don't.
so.
Well, you know, we joke around because, you know, me and Carmine, mainly because like we're best friends. We're working on a TV a series right now, a short form series based on a pilot that we both co-created with another producing partner of ours in Hermosa Beach, and we laugh about it, but like we laugh. We're like, you know, "How You Doing" should have really like kind of like made us like extremely rich. It made us money to live, but it wasn't like, you know, hitting that. It was a home run at the time. But this is 1999. There's no iTunes. We can't sell it on iTunes. There's
You can't
no.
sell on iTunes now.
Now you can, but again, it's a part of a record company and a record label. And
Is
all
it
that.
on
It's just like-
iTunes?
Yeah, you can find it on iTunes. Yeah. But again, back then, like if we sold it on our own on iTunes, it's like a whole different
Crazy.
ballgame. It's crazy. It's like back, you know, we called it packages.com because we actually put it in a package and mailing it out. Like, isn't it? You think about that now? It's like you know you could just go download it and pay 99 cents. It's like
Can't
it's crazy. to
stress
think-
enough. Like
I
so
can't-
ahead of the game.
Oh,
it's
like
crazy.
it was. We laugh about it, but right time, wrong place, or wrong place, right time. There's always a reason behind everything all the time. It's like everything happens for a reason. It takes you to that next level of like, you know, working on other things. You know.
That makes sense. Real quick, I'm just gonna plug in our Give Me a Break right here. So this is this week's segment of Give Me a Break.
As part of the Give Me a Break segment here on Growing Up Italian, the podcast, I want to give a big shout out to Kima, the restaurant in Roslyn at 1446 Old Northern Boulevard, to the Angelitis family for always being very supportive. Thank you.
We're back. That Kamaya looks good. We gotta go there, G. It's time to, you know. I've heard about it. I've seen it all over Instagram.
Kima is the.
Is it Kamaya or Kima?
Kima,
okay.
which means wave in Greek.
Wave. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. So let's talk about your acting, filmmaker, director. I mean, if I had a list of everything you do, it would be like Santa Claus, I think. You know, you do a little bit of everything, man. I admire that. You know, not keeping yourself in a bottle and you know, doing whatever you want.
Well, back, I guess, you know, I was always told. I was again. You people like try to like tell you this is the way it should be, or you conform to like you think what it should be, or whatever like the next person's doing. You kind of follow that routine, right? I guess back then I was always, or even again to this day, or even back then, I was always working on like a dozen things. Like I was like, you know, but if I was working on a dozen things, I would make sure that I followed through on a dozen things. But I always got, when I say always got, whether it be whoever it was from, you got to concentrate on one thing. You got to focus on one thing.
Yeah, man. That's the complete opposite.
You got to focus on one thing. And I was like, yeah, no, but like I feel like I got I'm grasping that I can multitask. Like I can, you know, juggle a few things. Mm-hmm. And I've always had that mentality of like, all right, well, I love acting, but I also love being like, you know, behind the scenes and working with actors. And I love what happens behind the scenes technically. And I love the marketing that goes into, you know, pushing a product, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of like saw that. I came from the school of, self-taught filmmaker, but took acting classes, but also thought that this is the way I see it. Like, I see the product, I want to market it this way, and then we'll kind of like get it out there into the marketplace. Now, 30 years later, with social media, with what's going on, with how people are doing things, Renaissance woman, Renaissance man, it's like real savvy to be that person. I was already that person like 30 years ago, but that's just how I was cut. Like I was cut from a certain cloth of like, this is how I always wanted to do things. Like, I didn't want to just learn one thing. I want to know a little bit about that. I want to learn more about that. I want to know about that. I want to learn more about that. And for me, it all feels like it kind of like came together. The acting is fantastic, but it also got me to a point of, that didn't just like happen overnight either. I had kind of like, hit the pavement. I was working in, the corporate world and going on auditions and studying acting and doing radio and, trying to get on radio, doing radio bits.
What was like your big break, you think, that like made you say like, okay, I could take acting and do it full time?
2006, like I'll never forget it. Like, I was working for corporate America. I was working for Verizon. I was making I must have been there maybe a couple of months. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm making great money. And I'm like, it's 2006. And it's like June, July of 2006. And I had some friends living in LA. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm at my desk and I'm like, it's 2006. I went through I was married once. I didn't have kids at the time, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm like, I'm in the corporate world. I got a shirt and tie on, but I've taken acting classes. I had some minor successes in the music, radio world, radio gigs, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I worked on a couple of acting gigs as well, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I just basically packed it all up, 2 bags, put money in my pocket, went out to LA. Like, without even thinking about it. My friend was like, "Oh, I sleep on my couch."
You were just like chasing something, like, or did you?
No, I just want. I was
there?
like, he was like, "Oh, I got some friends out here, but don't worry about it." I'm like, I'm not coming out there to be an actor. I go, I'm doing it here in New York. I just want to get out there. I want to live by the beach in Santa Monica. As a kid, I always like, loved LA, and like I would read about it in papers and like, magazines. I'm like, I'll live by the beach for a couple of months. I'll find my way. Old school kid, like, my parents, like leaving my parents was a big deal. But I was like, you know what? I got to get out of New York for a while.
How long were you in LA for?
So I went to LA in 2006, and then I left there in 2012. But from 2006 to about 2008, to get back to your question of how I kind of like feel like I got my foot in the door. So I wound up going to LA. In about 2008, I had a VHS tape with the projects that I've worked on in TV and film here in New York.
Like a reel?
On a VHS. So now I got to go and take that in 2008, 2009 and convert it to a DVD. And then my roommate at the time, who I bunked in with after about staying a couple of years in LA, and it was like 2008, was Paul Gennaro in West Hollywood. And Paulie,
I see him in Clubhouse rooms.
And he takes my tape, he converts it to DVD, he puts it in his Mac at the time, and he goes, "Oh, we're gonna upload it to like YouTube." And I'm like, "YouTube? Okay, cool. What's YouTube?" He's like, "Oh, it's been out for a couple of years. Like, they got this going on. You can do the hashtag, this and that." And he's pretty savvy with it. So he puts it up on YouTube, and I'm going, all right, cool, whatever. And this is like 2008, 2009. I'm like, YouTube's like out, 4 years at the time, right?
Probably not even.
Not even, right?
I usually see things up on YouTube
so
for like 12
I
years.
go, holy shit. I go, wait a second. I'm like, fucking YouTube. I'm like, that's like internet shit. And like, I left my number on my VHS tape on my cell that I had for like the longest time. And I go, wait a second. It's going to be on the internet. Someone like watches it on YouTube, they're gonna see my phone number, they're gonna call me up. That's fucked up. That's not cool. I was like, all right, whatever, forget it. Whatever, it's out there now, whatever. So he uploads it onto YouTube, and about 3 months after that, I get a phone call from a writer who at the time was just getting off a job as the editor of The Onion. And he goes, I just finished a movie called The Wrestler that I wrote, and I was the editor of The Onion, and I wrote this new film called Big Fan. And it's going to be starring Patton Oswalt, and you look like Patton Oswalt's brother. And I found your reel on YouTube. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I kept on punching in like Italian character actor, Italian ethnicity artist, actor, and your reel kept on popping up on YouTube. And I go, yeah, okay, whatever. And I thought it was one of my buddies, like fucking with me. Like, no, this is a joke. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I was on my way to a bartending job in Beverly Hills. And I go, this is a joke. Pretty much tell him to go fuck off. He calls me back. He goes, no, for real. I wrote a movie called The Wrestler. I go, oh shit, The Wrestler? No one knew The Wrestler because being that I love movies so much, I knew that they were filming The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke because I was a Mickey Rourke fan. Yeah. I knew about the movie. Not everybody knew about the movie. So because I just wound up doing this movie called The Wrestler, and we're going in right away to do this movie called Big Fan. He basically offers me the role of Patton Oswalt's brother in Big Fan on the phone. On the phone. I said, my parents, he goes, oh, you're not in New York? I go, no, I'm in LA. He goes, but you have a 917 number. I go, no, I'm from New York, but I live in LA. He goes, it's a low budget movie. I go, no. I go, if you're offering me the role on the phone, like without even auditioning me, and you just saw my clips, I go, I'll buy a ticket. I'll stay with my parents. They're in Queens, and I'll come do the movie. First day of the shoot on this movie, I'm changing in Staten Island in a car. I'm changing in the car. I think I got paid like $200 a day. I worked on it for like 4 or 5 days. The movie gets into Sundance the following year for Best Picture, up against Precious, that Oprah's movie that she bought. And it winds up getting...
Precious?
Precious is a good movie.
That's a big movie,
those were the 2 movies at Sundance. Big Fan and Precious.
Wow.
2009. A year later, Wrestler gets nominated for Best Actor for Mickey Rourke. And like I was in that group of like, oh, he wrote Big Fan, directed Big Fan, he wrote The Wrestler.
You were in the loop at this
I was in the loop at the time because I decided after a string of luck, moving to LA in 06, meeting Paul, putting the VHS tape converted to DVD onto YouTube with Paulie putting it on YouTube.
These are all pieces of the puzzle.
Like my mother's like, you could be doing what you do here in New York than you're doing like LA.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. I moved to LA, and that's one of the. No, I would not be in Big Fan. Big Fan would have been made today, but you would probably, if I can go into a time machine, it'd be like probably like Michael Imperioli or like somebody else would have got the role or whatever. I don't know. Like that don't happen without like the you want to call them movie gods, TV gods, however, it's like you take that leap of faith. You feel like this is the time to go to LA with a couple of, shackles and fazools in my pocket, go live on a couch.
And you make it happen.
Right, exactly. And then the rest kind of like fell into play.
Let's talk about Cruise a little bit. I'm actually literally going to watch that tonight. But it's funny, you said to me like, this guy is interviewing me. You don't know about this movie.
I'm gonna pull the Eddie Murphy from Trading Places. Like, huh?
Tell me about Cruise though. It sounds like it's probably, is it your favorite piece of what you've done?
I mean, you know what? It's when I lived in LA, I ran into always like great people that were filmmakers that I admired, like producers and directors, and they always said, "Be true to yourself, be authentic to who you are." They even, like I would always be like, I got an Italian first name and Italian last name. My legal name is almost worse than trying to pronounce Calogero, my legal name.
What, Cafarelli you're saying?
No, my legal name is really not Gino. It's just like Gino's like what they call me. On my license, it's not Gino.
What is it? Are you allowed to say what you're?
Yeah, it's Egidio.
For me, it's tough. Imagine someone that doesn't speak Italian.
No, I mean, picture me like being in like 3rd grade and like all through grammar school, high school. They didn't have like.
How did they pronounce that?
Well, they did. They would always stop. They'd be like.
And you'd be like, "That's me."
I would go. That's. They go, "How do you pronounce it?" I'm like, Egidio. They're like, Egidio, Aginzo. Dude, they called me Iggy in high school.
Iggy?
Yeah, my
Gino's better than Iggy.
My computer.
Yeah, Gino's better.
But even like as a kid, they would just call me Gino. My mother would call me Gino. Like it's not Egidio. Egidio was my grandfather's name. That's my grandfather's name. Like Egidio.
That's funny.
Like my cousins in Toronto, Egidio. Like, another Egidio in like Italy. Like that's,
that's how it is in our family too.
That's how it is. You get named after.
Yeah, there's like three Sabino Curcios going around,
So, but I worked on that film while I was living in LA. They would always tell me like work on like, authenticity, like, hold on to like your roots, your background, how you grew up. And I'm like, I kind of like understood it, but I didn't. I'm like, wait a second. Okay. They're like, grasp your authenticity. Like, cause again, that's a whole, another subject about being, Italian of Italian ethnicity and being an artist. It's a whole different. I mean, we can go on go down that rabbit hole for a long time. But I basically started listening to some of these people, and they're like, stay, true to your roots, how you grew up. And I'm like, So I started writing about how I grew up in Queens, and I wrote a pilot, and then I wound up shooting something based on the pilot, and then I wound up showing it to Rob Siegel, who ultimately discovered me on YouTube with Big Fan, and I brought him my short story called Franny Lou, which inspired the movie Cruise. And again, it wasn't like it didn't
You must be uploading clips on YouTube every day. If I was you, I would upload like stuff on YouTube every day. That's like your good luck charm.
Yeah, but you know what? I love listening to YouTube with music and stuff, but he basically takes on the movie Cruise, and I connected the dots, and we wound up making Cruise, and we wound up making Cruise. And but that was a whole, that was a 10-year process. Like, it goes from like a mock teaser to me writing a pilot, and this is like 2011, 2009, 10, 11, and then 12 showing it to Rob, and then 13 getting it out there, and then 15 getting it made, to like 18 coming out. That was like a 10-year journey. And the reason being I'm very proud of that film is because I basically, and Catherine's character, we basically pay my parents, and the lead character is loosely based on me. It's how I grew up in Queens in 1987, like cruising around, listening to music, the beautiful times of like back in the day, no social media. The easy, like it's a crowd pleaser movie. It's fun. It's got that throwback music from the 80s, that freestyle that we grew up with, or 80s like music that was kind of like on the top of the charts back then. It's just a fun period of my life, and will stand, go to stand the test of time, because it's one of those movies that you'll appreciate for a long time.
Yeah, I want to watch it.
It's not. It got nothing to do with politics. It's got nothing to do with sending messages. It's just a fun. It's a fun movie. It's like being like finding your first love in the summer of 1987. It's like a musical soundtrack.
I like that.
It's an homage to, and the Mets are in there too. We mentioned the Mets in there.
Oh, nice. We're gonna check that out. So, Athena visits the Marina.
I wind up.
How did that happen?
Well, basically, quarantine hits, right? Like we're in March now, right? So basically a year ago, right?
Year anniversary.
Right? Almost like to the date, right? What was it, like March 12th, I think it was?
It should be any
It was
day.
right around the time of St. Patrick's Day, so we're right there.
St. Patrick's Day was like the last licks, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think it was St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, got canceled.
Yeah, last year, so it was a little bit before that. So around this time.
So basically, everything kind of like shut down in the TV and film world. I mean, I had some stuff that I was developing on my own that we were going to shoot, and just everything kind of like stopped in its tracks due to the virus. And I had already planned on doing a children's book inspired by my daughter, and just kind of like.
It took as an opportunity to really like.
It took me like an opportunity to dive into really, completing the manuscript, and then submitting it to the publisher, and then working with the publisher on getting the right illustrator. And things moved a lot more quicker on that, because I wasn't concentrating on more of auditioning or working on the next TV or film gig that I was developing. But I was developing and turning the movie Cruise into a musical.
Oh, wow.
Which was wild. And then as soon as I really got into the crux of I booked like 5-6 venues, like one in the Hudson Valley, one in Queens, one in Long Island, one in Jersey. I had like 5 venues booked, and I was going to start casting and rehearsing. And thank God it didn't get to that point where, we
had to cancel shows.
Cancel shows or getting to the rehearsals and hiring actors. It happened right at the beginning of, we were just going to go after it, and then like, how are we going to put on like shows and live audience to like pandemic? And I was like, boom, it's dead. So then that's why I kind of like buried myself and focused on the book.
So it's your daughter. She has like a.
She was born with a hearing loss in both ears. Her name's Athena, and hence the title of the book, Athena Visits the Marina. And I thought of the idea, I think it was around the same time we were about to film Cruise. which was like 2015, and I was in Athens, and we were driving by a marina, and I had my daughter in the car, and she had her hearing aids on, and I'm like, Athena, Marina, and I'm like, shit like always kind of like sticks with me for a while before I actually like follow through on it. So if it becomes an idea, and I always tell people if it's an idea just stays there unless you water it and let it grow. So that stayed with me for a little while, and then I started.
Did you have to write this idea down, or you just always?
No, it kind of was just with me all the time. I was like Athena and Marina, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. I'm like, maybe I could pitch it as an animated thing. But no, I already pitched an animated thing 4 years before that, which was like 2011, which I'm converting back. It's coming back after 10 years into a podcast. I basically already went down that rabbit hole, like pitching an animated show. So I'm like, I don't really know about the animated world. I know about, the film world and the TV world, but I love the book world, the kids' book world, because I started taking my kid to like the bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, and I would start doing my research and my due diligence, and I would start researching books on kids and like what worked and what rhyme books and story books and third-person narrative books, and I started doing my homework, and little by little, I was doing more homework on the subject, and I'm like, wow, there's not too many books about little kids or a little girl that wears hearing aids. So then it started clicking. I'm like, okay, Athena, the Marina, it's about a little girl, true to life. My daughter, she wakes up, routine, puts hearing aids on. She calls them all betters because they make her hear better. She does this on her morning routine. I was like, okay, we could just make a really general book about her daily routine. But on that weekend, when she doesn't have the daily routine of going to school, she goes to the marina and she communicates with sea animals via her hearing aids, because hearing aids amplify sound. Yeah. And amplifying sound, like they hear like
stuff that we
can hear, but it also is amplified. And in the beginning of the book, I wanted to put in a beautiful little segment called the 13 cool words to look out for in the book, and one of them is amplify. And my daughter always can't pronounce that word when she reads the book. She goes, Daddy, what amplify? What does that mean? And she reads
How old is Athena?
She's going to be 8 in May.
Okay. God bless.
So man. It was just really a project that just kind of organically came together.
So if anybody's interested in this, because I know a couple people that, have something similar, whether it's one ear or both, So Athena visits
Athena visits the marina.com, and if you actually go to that site, which is a Shopify site that I have someone kind of like running, they'll send out a free gift. It's on Amazon. It's on
but order direct.
But if you order directly through that, you get a little perk. You get a free bracelet that glows in the dark. On one side it says hearing loss awareness, which is, again, why the book was made, because I want to bring more awareness to kids that are born with a hearing loss. And then on the other side, it says Athena visits the marina.com, a new children's book by me, Gino Cafarelli. Again, I find it funny when people say, oh, you're an author now. I'm like, author? Like, kind of weird. It doesn't really kind of like resonate with me, but I'm like, it's true. Like,
no, you do. You're a man of many talents.
I didn't set out to be an author of a children's book. It kind of like just happened that way. And I'm actually ghostwriting and packaging another kids book for a client and a friend of mine called The Adventures of Connie the Purple Bus, and that's going to focus on it's going to target appendicitis. So it's kind of like another message through a book. So it's
I like that. So you're like, not only are you just writing children's books, but you're actually promoting,
informing through awareness and like stuff like that. Again, for me, like when I put my heart and soul into a project, especially something like this, like a book that's inspired by my daughter, it hits home. And just like, again, I just wanted to, this, again, it's a book that will be out there like forever now. So like, again, we don't, again, I know people don't like to talk about it, but everyone doesn't live forever. And, eventually you don't want to leave legacies behind for
you're definitely
people.
Leaving a legacy.
And I want to leave like that legacy for my daughter. And she reads the book and she gets it, and she's getting it even more of like what her dad does. He wrote a book, and I've seen him on this, and because I play clips for her, and she's like, oh, that's you, Daddy. And she says,
I do that with my kids, but except with podcasts.
She sees like, oh my God, I was in Target recently. Oh my God, it was so cute. My daughter, and I'm not even paying attention because we're going through the toy section, but the toy section in Target was close to like the DVD section. But for me, there's no, in my head, there's no DVD section anymore because everything is streaming, right? Yeah. But there's still a DVD section at the store in Target, right? So it was like right next to the toy section, and it was she saw the Capone DVD.
Oh, you're on the cover?
Well, no, but it says the movie Capone, and she remembers it from being on
TV?
on the streamer.
Amazon.
And she's like, "Look, Daddy, Capone." And I'm like, "Oh," well, it's like, and she goes, "Who's in that?" She goes, "You." I'm like, "Oh," so it's like, it's just funny to like, she's, you see that she's starting to understand like what her dad does, which is amazing.
No, that's gotta be the best feeling.
Yeah, like especially working on a show now, or working like what I'm working on now. Like I wish I could just take her to work, but it's like it's a different world now because of the pandemic and there's so many restrictions.
You'll be able to eventually.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah. But
on
that's
that
the
note,
beauty of it,
on that note, there's no better way to end this than that. If you are interested in purchasing his book, we'll put the link to the website in his bio. Please, if you guys want to learn more, give awareness, it's a perfect book. If you know somebody that deals with this,
and you
too,
get the free bracelet that glows in the dark. That's a little bonus.
What's better than that?
Right.
Awesome.
Little glow in the dark bracelet.
Thank you guys all. Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.
Ciao.